Rev students, how are we doing, guys? You guys doing good? Move this table just a little bit. How's everyone doing? Doing good? Who got rained on today? Maybe someone, one or two of you? Football practice? Okay. Man, I'm excited to be here. I'm not sure about you guys. Fall is coming. Leaves are beginning to change. Movies are starting to come out in the movie theater. I'm excited about going to see the new Venom movie soon. Any Marvel movie fans in the room? Just a few of you? Just me on an island watching Marvel movies by myself, apparently. Anyways, one of my favorite superheroes is actually Spider-Man. Any Spider-Man fans? A few of you guys? I love Spider-Man. And I don't just love Spider-Man because, he's a cool superhero or he's young. I love Spider-Man because he's like the most relatable superhero. And you have to go back a little bit to understand what I'm saying because for most of you, you know Spider-Man as Tom Holland, our current Spider-Man. He's been in multiple movies. He helped save the universe. You know that Spider-Man. But Tom Holland's just a little bit too cool, okay? And then you go back a little bit, 5-10 years ago, and you have Andrew Garfield, right? He's not bad. He's an okay guy, but he's like this hipster skateboarder kid, and he's just a little bit too cool to be Spider-Man. And you go back a little bit further, and you have Tobey Maguire, right? The OG Spider-Man. And I'm not just talking like he's the original Peter Parker. He is Peter Parker chasing a bus because the bus didn't feel like stopping for him. He is Peter Parker trying to find a seat on the bus and no one will sit with him. That is the guy that I was growing up and I was like, yeah, I feel like that sometimes. And if this guy can be a superhero, I can do anything, right? And so anyways, if you know anything about that movie, there's lots of different stories, but the origin story of Spider-Man, if you don't know anything, I'm about to ruin it for you. He gets bitten by a radioactive spider, spoiler alert, and he gets spider-like powers. And as he's doing this, he's super strength, he can climb walls, all of these different things, and he begins to think about how he can use his power for himself. And he's actually in school, and a bully is picking on him, and he ends up beating up this bully very easily. And he gets home, and he's in trouble, and his Uncle Ben, his father figure, his guardian, is speaking to him. And he says, Peter, with great power comes great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. And I feel like we've heard that so many times, maybe it doesn't mean anything to us anymore, but there is a truth there that is there for everyone, and it was true for Peter. Peter left that moment, and he went to use his newfound power to get himself money. He joins a wrestling court, and he goes in to wrestle Bonesaw McGraw, who is played by the one and only Randy Savage, Macho Man. Anyone know him? It's okay. Some of you guys, some of my leaders, whoop, whoop, we good? And so we're getting old. It's okay. It's okay. And so, but anyway, so he wins it. And what happens next is he goes to get his payment, and the guy that's supposed to pay him cheats him out of his money. And in a turn of events, a guy comes and robs the guy that just cheated Spider-Man, and he has this moment where he can stop this guy, he can use all of his power, he can do the right thing, and he can stop this guy, yet instead he chooses to use his power for himself, and he lets this guy go. And this guy, because of this decision right here, unfortunately, this guy actually goes and ends up killing Peter's father figure, his guardian, his Uncle Ben. And because of one moment of using his great power irresponsibly, it changed his life forever. And so this saying is true for him, but it's true for us as well. How many of you guys have pets? Lots of pet people in this room. I know there's a lot of pet people. We have 3 dogs. We only talk about 2 of them because they're bigger and fluffier. But we have 3 dogs, and we love all of our pets. But there's something that has, if you've been a pet owner, there's been a point in time where you were responsible for that pet. Maybe it was simply just responsible for feeding them or filling up their water. Maybe that your parents left and you were responsible for making sure that this pet stayed alive or something happened. And in these times, the weight of responsibility can begin to sit on you. That because of this new position of power, because of this new position of authority, maybe they got hurt, maybe they got sick, and because of that, you felt the weight of the responsibility because in that moment, it was on you. You were the one who was responsible. And parents feel this way all the time with their kids when their kids are sick, when something happens, when they get hurt, and they're like, I can't do anything about this. One of the most horrible feelings is being in a position of power and authority, yet being powerless to do anything about what's going on around you. I remember I had something happen to me. I was a young adult leader, a lot like a lot of our leaders in the room, and I was serving, and I had a small group of students, and we were doing a community service project. And in that community service project, we were cleaning up this park. We were making a bike trail. And now I was not in charge of this event. I need to make that very clear. But someone decided to give me and one of my other students an axe, and our job was to chop roots on this trail so that bikers could go safely. As soon as I mentioned an axe, a lot of your eyes started getting a little bit bigger as you're anticipating, what is he about to say? What happened to the small child? Jeremy, what did you do? And so I was very safe. I was doing all of the right things. I was teaching him how to use it. I was watching him. And then all of a sudden, someone stirred up some bees. And bees started coming around and swarming. And he lost the grip on his axe. And it swung and hit him in the back of his head. Now, there was a slight moment of panic on my part as I'm wondering what's going to happen next. And he seems like he's okay. I checked the back of his head. There's no blood. There's not an open wound. It wasn't a very heavy impact. I'm asking him if he was okay, and he says, yeah, I'm okay. And then all of a sudden, he kind of gets pale. I'm pretty sure he was going into shock. And so in this moment, I hoist this child on my shoulders, and I'm on the radio, and I'm telling these people, hey guys, this might sound worse than it actually is, but I have a student that hit himself in the head with an axe, and I need someone to meet me over by the cars. And so I take him there, and he was fine. He survived. He's only slightly traumatized. I actually saw him a couple months ago, and we laughed about the story. There was no permanent, lasting damage other than being associated with me in that moment. But it was a moment where I felt completely powerless due to these circumstances around me. And maybe you've been in a situation like that before, but we're going to be digging into power. We're going to be digging into authority over the next couple of weeks, and not just understanding it, but understand how God set it up, understand how it relates to us, how he wants to operate us to operate with people in authority, and how in the positions of authority that we are in our lives, how we are to operate. And so I thought it would be best to start off by defining it. So this is how we're going to be defining authority throughout our series: someone who has the power or right to be in charge of someone or something. Authority is someone who has the power or right to be in charge of something or someone. And I think this definition makes sense for most of us, right? Someone has set someone in charge of them. Your parents are in charge of you. Your guardians are in charge of you. For the most part, you go to school and your teachers are in charge of you. If you're play sports, your coaches are in charge of you. Even as you get older and you start working a job, your boss is in charge of you. Even if you're the greatest CEO of all time and you own your own business and you run everything, if you're in a healthy environment, you have a board of directors that is holding you accountable. They are, in theory, in charge of you, making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. Authority and power and accountability is a part of all of our lives, and it's the way that God set it up. And a lot of times we think of it with a negative connotation. As soon as I started saying authority, you thought about that bad teacher. As soon as I said authority, you thought about that bad coach, or maybe you thought about that time, maybe quite recently, where your parents exercised their authority over you because of something that you did. But authority doesn't have to be negative. We're going to look at the very beginning in the book of Genesis and how God set up authority and what it's supposed to look like. So we're going to be in Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. There's Bibles in the seats if you want to join us. It's really easy to get to. It's going to be in one of your first couple of pages. So it says, "Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." And what we're seeing here is that from the very beginning, God has set up the world to work in a way with positions of authority. That he was in authority, he was in charge of everything. And as he began to create, he created us, and he says, hey, you have dominion, you have rule, you have authority over some of the things that I have created. Because we are made in his image and he is an authority, we have been put in positions of authority. And the idea of being in a position of authority, the idea of being a position of power can be exciting. We might like the idea of it because it makes us feel important. That people would respect us, that people would like us, that people would look up to us because of our position, because of our authority, that they would see that we would be able to operate however we want to. But as we talked about before, and we're going to keep digging into it, the more power that you have, the more responsibility that you have. The more power and authority that you have, the more responsibility that comes with it. And that's going to be true this week. It's going to be true tomorrow. It's going to be true as we're going, and we're going to keep bringing that back up. But I want you to understand, the more power that you have, the more responsibility that comes with it. And for every great story of someone using their power right and doing all their right things and operating in their power perfectly and using their authority to do good, you have the other side of the coin of someone who's using it for their own benefit or even to take advantage of other people. Power has been used to liberate and free and aid people who are oppressed and harmed. And on the other side of the coin, there is someone in power who is doing the oppression and the harm. Power has been used to stop wars and save people, and power has been used to start wars and kill people. Power and authority is a reality in our life, but what I want us to look like and what we're going to begin to see is that Jesus wanted us to do something different. When Jesus came to the scene, it changed everything. Even for the religious people of his day, the Jewish people had a prophecy that someone was going to come in authority on their behalf to change their lives. They thought that it was going to be a military leader, a powerful leader, someone that was going to come and free them and free the slaves, and that they were going to come. They might even come and defeat the reigning Roman Empire at the time. And they thought this person was going to come in, yet Jesus came. He did something completely different. And this is kind of where we're, kind of the theme of our series and where we're going and what we're trying to do. And it's this simple idea that Jesus turned the idea of power upside down. When it comes to the idea of power and authority, Jesus is taking what the world thinks. Jesus is taking what you think right now and your desires and what you're wanting. He's saying, hey, my kingdom is going to look different. And that's exactly what he is going to be teaching. He lived and looked differently than those that were in power. He challenged the reigning power at the time to the point that they didn't like it, so they had them killed. Because Jesus was challenging him, they had him killed, and they thought by killing Jesus, they would get more power, because by killing Jesus, they would get more authority, but Jesus didn't stay dead. And when Jesus rose from the grave, it was a moment of him saying, I have all the power. It was a moment of him saying, hey, I am in control of all things. And this is exactly what Jesus said to his followers. He rises, he spends some time with his disciples, and he says, hey guys, I'm leaving. I'm sending you out on mission. I'm sending my Spirit to help you guys, but there's something I need you to know about authority. There's something I need you to know about how the world works, because it's going to change everything. And in Matthew 28:18, he says, and Jesus came and said to them, all authority Everyone say all. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Listen, that's a pretty bold statement, right? All things. If you do a word study in English and Hebrew and Greek, you actually find something really interesting, that all means all in every one of those languages. That when he says all things, he meant it. For the people of the day, that would have been very baffling, because the Roman Empire ruled all things. Maybe you don't like history as much as I do. I love history, particularly the Roman Empire. Just to give you some information, the Roman Empire ruled the known world for around 1,500 years. To put that in perspective, us as a country, as the United States of America, has only existed for a couple of hundred years. Yet, what Rome was able to do was rule, not well, but rule the known world for 1,500 years. There is something amazing. And no one thought of a future without Rome. No one thought of a future where they weren't ruling and they weren't reigning. And Jesus says, hey, actually, I am the one who is ruling and reigning. And even for us in our lives, all means a lot. All means he has power and authority over our decisions that we make. It all means he has power and authority over our relationships. All means he has power and authority over how we handle conflict and disagreement. All means he has power and authority over our family dysfunction. All means over sickness, over cancer, over coronavirus. All means all. And when he beat death, death was the unbeatable thing. Even Rome couldn't beat death. And when he beat death, all meant something very different to his audience. And he's saying, all things are under me. All things submit to me. I am ruling over all things. And so for the time that we have left, if we're saying Jesus is this all-reigning authority, if Jesus is in charge, I think it begs the question, how has he called those who want to follow him, who want to be under his authority, to live in his kingdom? What are they supposed to look like? And so in one of his most famous messages, he is teaching that exactly. What does it look like to live in my kingdom? What are the characteristics of someone who lives in my kingdom? So we're going to be in Matthew chapter 5, verse 2 through 5. It says, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Not only is this idea completely countercultural to Jesus' time, this is completely countercultural to our time. The world is telling you, hey, you do you. You've probably heard that before. Hey, you go get yours. Your responsibility is you. Hey, whatever it takes to climb the ladder, whatever it takes to reach your goals, spare no cost. Leave the bodies beside you as you rise to success, as you rise to fame. You go get yours. And Jesus here is taking the focus off of the me and putting it where it rightly belongs, on him. And so we're going to break this down very quickly. The first thing he says is poor in spirit. Poor in spirit doesn't necessarily mean financially poor. It doesn't mean, it can mean that someone who is poor in spirit might not have a lot of money. But to be poor means you have an acknowledgement of your lacking or your need of something. So someone who is financially poor realizes that they have a lacking or a need of finances. So when he says, those who are in my kingdom are poor in spirit, he says they are someone who acknowledges that they are lacking or in need of spirit, of me, someone who realizes the need in their life for me. This first one is an attitude, how we think about ourselves. Are we someone who thinks of ourselves in need? Are we someone who thinks of ourselves as the greatest, as the best? Listen, if you are in need, you are someone who realizes that you need something, but you are also someone who realizes you can go to someone who has what you need. And so if you are poor in spirit, if you realize that you are lacking Spirit, lacking God in your life, lacking who he is, his love for you, his care for you. He's saying you can come to me and get it, but you won't come to me if you don't know that you need it. And one of the saddest things is that there are people around us, people in this room, people in our lives who are talented enough, who are smart enough. They will be successful enough, they will be powerful enough in their own power that they will never realize that they are in need. They will be completely happy with who they are and what they have achieved, and they will never realize that they were not poor in spirit. They did not realize the need in their life of God. So the second thing he said is those who mourn. It's very easy to read this and just think, okay, those who mourn will be comforted. So what he's saying here is if you are sad, something's going on in your life, if someone's going to comfort you, God's going to comfort you, but context is very important. Remember, he's saying, this is what it looks like to live in my kingdom. This is the change that needs to happen inside of you for you to be a citizen of my kingdom, for you to be a part of what I'm doing. So when he says, blessed are those who mourn, he's saying, blessed are those who are brokenhearted. Blessed are those who in another one of the Gospels that talks about this is that blessed are those who weep. But what are we brokenhearted over? What are we weeping over? And what the author here, and what Jesus is saying is he is pointing out the brokenness, the sin, our need for him. So where he says, hey, if you're poor in spirit, you're realizing that you have need of me. The second thing that you need to do if you're part of my kingdom is realize that you are broken. Realize that you have sin in your life, that you have fallen short. Because listen, if you don't realize it, you can't do anything about it. How can someone comfort you if you're just hiding it? If you don't know that anything's actually wrong? So he says, blessed are those who are brokenhearted over the brokenness inside of them, because at that moment when you realize that you are broken and when you realize that you need God and that poor in spirit begins to come up, he is able to comfort you in that moment. And then the last thing he says, the meek, blessed are the meek. And meek isn't a word that we use. It's often associated with weakness, but meek means lowly. Meek means humble. It means it's not about me. It's this others-focused mentality, this your way, not my mentality. And it has nothing to do with weakness. It's strength under control. That you would not let all of your desires be about yourself, that you would not let all your power be about yourself, that you would not let all your authority be about yourself, but you would use what you have been given and be lowly and be humble and see how you could serve and love others well. Listen to the students. The person who is not focused on getting the most out of their own kingdom. Listen, the person who is not focused on getting the most out of their own kingdom will get the most out of God's kingdom. If you're focused on your own kingdom, you don't know that there's another kingdom that has so much more available to you. If you're so focused on building your own kingdom and making sure everything's great for you, you might just miss out on all that God has for you. I love how one author said this. He said, blessed are they who give up their love of self, their love of sin, their love of this world. It is such that Jesus gives his unbreakable world. You shall inherit the earth. Listen, students, if you want the world, you're going to have to give it up. He says it can't be about building your own kingdom if you want to be in my kingdom. Listen, and these are just a few of the things that Jesus talked about. As I said, how his kingdom looks different. What does it look like to be in power and authority? And listen, he just did things different. He could have used his power for himself, but yet instead he chose to be someone who used his power to honor and show value to women when the society didn't. He was someone who used his power to take care of and heal the outcast when the society didn't. He was someone who would heal people when society would just let them go. He was someone who used his power to forgive the people who had wronged him. And this is the invitation that is on the table. This is the invitation that this authority, that this Jesus is inviting us to say, I'm going to follow this. The change starts inside of me, but for me to submit, for me to follow Jesus, means that I got to turn everything upside down and change everything. It can't be about me. The poor in spirit, brokenhearted over the sin, the meek, the lowly, the humble, the others focus. He said, these are the things that describe the people in my kingdom. So my question to you, is that something that describes you? Listen, students, when we trust Jesus as the ultimate power and authority in our lives, we free ourselves from trying to control things we have no power or authority over. Listen, God has and will place you in positions of authority throughout your life. And how you operate in those moments shows, are you living for your kingdom or are you living for his kingdom? And listen, we want authority. We talked about how authority can be seen as a bad thing. We want authority in our lives. You might have never thought about it before. Listen, if there is a fire going on at your house, you do not want a mailman to come help you with that. Am I right? If there is a fire going in your house and it is crumbling down and the heat's overtaking you and the smoke's going everywhere, you do not want the person who checked you out at Walmart to come help you. It is in those moments of crisis, it is in those moments that you want an authority on fire, maybe a fireman, to come in and save you and aid you. In the same way, if someone was trying to break into your house, like you don't want the person that watches your dogs to come in and help you. You want someone who is an authority on law and public safety. And in the same way, students, in our lives, when the fires of our house is crumbling, when someone is breaking in, whatever it looks like, we have an invitation to submit to the authority of everything, the God-man. And Jesus says, I have all authority. I have all power, and I am inviting you in to be a part of something amazing, something that has never been done before. We're literally turning the world upside down. When we go from me to meek, to being others-focused, when we start beginning to think about power and authority differently, we begin to walk in the invitation that he's given us. And we're going to be doing something throughout this series called the Honor Challenge. We're encouraging you, if you have a social media account, we want you to find someone who you is in a position of power or authority in your life that is purposefully using it to invest in you or your community, and we want you to honor them by simply making a social media post, a story on Instagram, whatever you have, and to post it and say, hey, this is why I want to honor this person. This is what they do. This is because one of the things that Jesus teaches us is to honor those in authority. And so if we have people in our life who are operating in authority and power well, we want to honor that. We want to be a part of our culture. So earlier today, just as an example, and because it's something that I want to be a part of my life, I want to be known as me, I chose one of your high school teachers. Maybe you guys know Coach Brandon Thomas. He's one of my friends. We meet every Thursday morning, very early, and we talk about God. And over the last couple of years, here's what I've seen. He's someone who cares about his family. He's someone who cares about his students. He's someone who cares about his players. And that is what he spends his time doing. And even above that, even though he's a teacher during the day and then he has practices at night on Sunday mornings, he comes into one of our rooms over there and he teaches some of our preschool students that Jesus loves them and that they have value and that they are cared for and that he is there for them. And that is worth honoring. And students, there are people in your lives, maybe a teacher, maybe a coach, maybe a neighbor, maybe it's your small group leader. I don't know who it is. But I believe God's not only calling us to be people who live honorably in our power and authority, but to honor those in power and authority. So that's what we want to do. We're going to be talking more about it later. We're going to be giving you some examples. If you don't follow us on social media, we want you to do that because you're going to see all of those things. But it all starts with the invitation. He says, I have all authority. I have all power over all things, and I'm inviting you in the same way we want a fireman to be the authority of the fires in our life and a policeman to be authority in the law and our safety. We want the God-man to be the authority over all things in our lives, that as we walk, whether it's our relationships or our friendships or our conflict or difficulty, we can bring that to him knowing he is the one who is in control. And it takes it off of us because we do not have power over it, students. Pray with me.